at one point I was actually dating a girl with a twin?
No.
Yeah, a lot of people like to joke around. They ask me, hey, how can you tell them apart? And I was like, well, Jennifer paints her nails purple and Greg has a dick.
Yep, I have heard that.
I don't know, I just heard that today. I thought I would laugh. Anyhow, welcome back to the Drive Back Podcast. Of course, my name is Garrett.
I'm Adrian.
And welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a show and tell, which is what, Adrian?
It is where I've seen one film and Garrett has not, and Garrett has seen the other and I have not, and then we each watch them.
That is absolutely correct. And we could not have two more different movies today.
Every time this happens, I pick first. Almost always. You have the choice.
We've talked about this before, too. I do have a prediction for how this episode is going to go.
Okay.
But I'm not going to share it because I have been known to be wrong.
Did you write it down for proof?
I probably should.
Garrett is grabbing a pen and paper, and he is
here.
writing down. Oh, he has a sealed manila envelope. Oh, he's flagging down a post carrier. He's mailing it. Oh, okay. Oh, he almost tripped, but he is coming back. Okay.
All right.
I'm assuming you locked it in?
It's delivered in the mailbox, heading to you as soon as it can.
All right.
But today, again, we have two very different movies. But let's go ahead and just jump right in. The first movie is going to be the one that actually Adrian had put forward that I hadn't seen before. And that's Bridge to Terabithia. Released in 2007, Bridge to Terabithia was directed by Gabor Supo and stars Josh Hutcherson, AnnaSophia Robb, and Robert Patrick. A preteen's life turns upside down when he befriends the new girl in school, and they imagine a whole new fantasy world to escape reality. No noteworthy awards to mention with this one. So, what made you pick Bridge to Terabithia, besides we seem to bring it up in conversation a lot when we're on the podcast?
Cassidy and I talk about it monthly, probably. I just really like it. I think it's a great movie. There's a lot of nostalgia to it, but I think it's also one of, probably, without spoiling anything, the darker kids movies that came out at the time. And I think it deals with a lot of really powerful things, and it's got kind of a twist that I think did you know the plot of the film at all?
Kind of. I know we had joked around about a certain thing that happens about, I would say, 2/3 the way through the movie. We had joked about that before, but I didn't really know anything about the movie going in. I never read it. I never saw it in theaters. I just remember seeing the previews. And even as a kid, I was like, it doesn't look like me. I think it was right when I was about to get into high school or something, right around that point.
Doesn't look like you?
No, it doesn't look like the kind of movie that I would have enjoyed at that point in my life.
That is so interesting. We have such different tastes. Yeah, but that's why I picked it.
At that point in life, I'm not saying now.
I think now, too.
So you described this, you talked about this movie monthly with Cassidy. And without spoilers, real quick, kind of general thoughts. I don't know why.
Are you giving your general thoughts?
Yeah, it was my first time watching it, my guy. I don't know why you guys talk about this movie monthly. I could forget about this movie ever existing. Honestly, it was so uninteresting up until a major event happens. At that point, it does become interesting.
Yeah, Cass and I also wrote in a manila envelope that would be your answer. Very predictable.
I honestly, and as I'll kind of talk about a little bit later, I think that the story, as far as the original book, is probably much more interesting. I would read the book, but I think it's not the story, it's not the characters. For me, it's really just the way this movie looks. The actors they chose for the children, I do not like. I don't like Josh Hutcherson. I don't like AnnaSophia Robb. I never have. It was really nice to see Robert Patrick in something where he's not a liquid Terminator or a villain of some sort. Just because just seeing him as a real racist guy in Peacemaker is really this is like a stark difference. I do want to say though, in like some sort of alternate universe where there's no AnnaSophia Robb character, this movie feels like it's the prequel for how a serial killer is born, or like a doomsday cult, because the parents, like, they live off their own food and stuff, and they're poor, and the son's like the only male person. Maybe I'm watching way too many true crime things recently, but like the fact that the boy is the only boy in the family, and he's kind of like doing all the work kind of a thing. I don't know. It just feels like this is how a serial killer is made. It was really funny to me. I don't know.
Wild. Yeah, I did not get that at all.
But then, obviously, AnnaSophia Robb's character comes in and changes his life up. But before we dive into spoilers, obviously, you and Cassie really like this movie. Any general thoughts before we dive in?
I feel like I gave them. But yeah,
Well,
I just really like the movie, and I think it's got a lot of nostalgia to it. I think it's really fun, and it takes me back to a place in my mind where imagination can run wild and anything can be whatever you want it to be, and life is just different when you're younger.
Alrighty then. Well, if you're looking to watch Bridge to Terabithia, I mean, we did talk. I don't think we revealed what we were watching last week. But if you do want to watch Bridge to Terabithia, it is available for rent only, unfortunately. So you can rent it only through Amazon Prime or where you go to get your movies from. That being said, we're going to drop a spoiler alert for Bridge to Terabithia. And there we go. Now that that's out in the ether. There's really not much I have to say about this movie, except it's just pretty boring to me.
Fair enough.
I mean, again, not a lot happens up until AnnaSophia Robb's character dies. And then at that point, Josh Hutcherson delivers a pretty good performance after that, I would say.
Okay.
I was actually getting more invested into the character, but it was too little too late, I guess, would be the big cause for concern there. It's nice to see Zoe Deschanel again taking roles where it's just her and not playing the character.
Cass and I were talking I wonder if it's in her clause that she has to sing in every role, that she has to do a campy
or just
song.
Be the awkward, bookish white girl. That's just her character.
She makes more than me, so good for her.
It's a good point. I mean, it's just those early 2000s movies where the depictions of school and every single character has to have a bully kind of a thing. It just gets really old and tiresome to me really quick. It just wasn't a pleasure to watch. I mean,
yeah, that's fair. I mean, I feel like with not much to talk about, all I can say is I disagree. So I don't really know.
Why do you disagree then? So I guess what makes the movie so positive for you?
Well, I think again, the nostalgia of it. I think when it came out, it's just a really powerful movie, especially as kids. It kind of covers towards the end about dealing with loss and that sometimes things just happen. But it's also about in the beginning, it's basically you can relate it to any point in your life where if you're stuck in the 9-to-5 kind of grind or you're stuck in your everyday off job, it's easy to get those blinders on where this is your life. But then this person comes into Josh Hutcherson's life and shows him that you don't have to think that way. You can break out. You can imagine whatever you want. And it even comes to the point where he's already being imaginative, and then kind of that his father in the movie, but that overbearing figure, whether that be a boss or whatever, says, "Hey, get your head out of the clouds. You can't do that." And he believes that because that's how we as adults are trained to be, is to follow rules and to do things a certain way. And this movie really helps showcase that there's a whole life out there besides what you think is the right thing to do or what you're afraid to do. And all it is across that bridge to Terabithia.
Yes, the land of rule breaking and being an adult without consequence. I don't know.
I have a good point.
I know. I do want to point out one thing that I thought was really funny, was that I feel like this movie actually has something in common with Cats.
Okay.
And that's at the end of the movie when Josh Hutcherson and his little sister are crossing over the bridge and all the Terabithians, for lack of a better term, are coming out of the woods.
Horrific CGI.
Yeah, you can see them floating on top of them. They're not making any contact. There's one point where there's a close-up on a woman's skirt as it's moving over the dirt as they're coming across the bridge. And it just looks so fake. But then there's that one little bush that gets pushed out of the way and you're like, oh, that actually looked decent. But then
someone was trying. Yeah.
Yeah, and the characters themselves were very detailed for the time.
Yeah, definitely.
All the texture work and the different things going on with every single character was really cool, but it just didn't fully connect. Also, the first time they see a giant, or a troll, whatever, I forget if it was a giant or a troll.
It was a giant.
It's the tree one where you see the sunlight through the eyes. That was a really cool visual, and I really thought
that was really cool.
I'll be using that for. I'll be using that for D&D moving forward. I actually thought that was really cool.
Oh, just a big tree as a
Well,
giant?
no, like the visual of like the sun coming through the eyes, and like it doesn't actually have
Sure.
eyes, like the bully girl at the end, who's just a giant CGI
Yeah.
monstrosity. But yeah, I really, and
Cool.
I'm struggling to find things to say about the movie. I just
Then give it your score.
yeah. As far as the final thought, I said the story that inspired the movie seems good, as in the book, but the film just fails to be interesting in any way to me, and I feel like the performances are pretty flat until it's too late for me to care. But it's not all bad. The movie is competently made, and it does have its good elements to it. So I did give the movie a 54. I'm not going to say it's completely bad. It's not completely good either. Just right around the middle. I would rather watch this again than Avatar, based on scores, I guess. Because I'll give Avatar around 50.
Nice. Okay.
But what about you, bud?
Yeah. Like I said, pretty much all the same stuff. I just think this is a really movie that came out during a growing time. I think it's a good movie that kind of you can apply depending on how empathetic you are to different parts of your life at pretty much any given point, and you can kind of relate it in so many different ways. And even on the rewatch of this, I mean, Cass and I are pretty much crying on the couch at part of the scenes and stuff like that. It's just really an emotional movie, and it's it's got a lot of heart. So I gave this movie a 82.
Okay. I think it says something. Maybe it's about my personality, where like I didn't have any emotion in this movie,
Empathy.
and I maybe cried during the end of. I think I tear up at the end of Return of the King every single time. Maybe I'm just a sociopath.
Well, I think it's you have sympathy but not empathy. You don't feel for.
I do have empathy, but not for children. So maybe that's the problem.
There you go. And I feel sometimes I feel like I still am a child at heart. So movies really speak to me in that way because when I was younger, I kind of adopted that philosophy of like you don't have to grow up, like you just get old. You don't have to mentally grow up. So I feel like movies like this really help me try to like latch on to that young person inside of me that is creative and wants to do fun things and doesn't follow rules and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of my movie taste stems from that desire.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, for me, like this is getting kind of deep. I feel like it's kind of the opposite. Like I always wanted to be more adult when I was a kid, and now that I am at that point, I mean, yes, I do go out and I try to find the movies that are, the inner child movies, right? Endgame, the Jurassic Parks, anything like that make me feel like a kid again. I love those, but I just look at again, I've said this on the podcast multiple times. I don't like kids. I don't like being around them. Doesn't matter. Anywhere from a baby to like 18. No, thank you. But
which is so crazy, yeah. Because I feel like life can
I'd say about 16. When you can have a decent conversation.
I feel like I very quickly in my life realized that like life was happening too fast. So I really tried to hold on to those things. So movies that speak about being young and me being able to apply like that, again, rule breaking aspect or changing up your life or doing something different has always really appealed to me.
Gotcha. And that's going to actually be a good segue because we're going to talk about adults acting like children. Moving on to the second movie that we're covering today, which was the one that I had picked, which is The Death of Stalin. Released in 2017, The Death of Stalin was directed by Armando Iannucci and stars Steve Buscemi, Simon Russell Beale, and Jeffrey Tambor. It's Moscow, 1953. After being in power for nearly 30 years, Soviet dictator Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin takes ill and quickly dies. Now the members of the Council of Ministers fall into a mad scramble for power. That makes it seem much more dramatic than it is, and I would say it is there are serious tones to the movie, but it is a dark comedy. It is a very dark comedy because it's crazy that some of these things actually happened, and I think that's where a lot of the humor kind of comes in.
100%.
I chose this movie. Originally, I had this set for a different film, but I had just rewatched this movie recently, and I'd seen a couple of YouTubers that I follow cover it, and thought it would be a good thing to expose Adrian to.
Nice.
That being said, what did you think of The Death of Stalin?
Well, I went first on my one.
No, I asked you why you chose it. not what you thought of it first.
Oh, fair enough. I guess I volunteered my synopsis.
True.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was good. It falls into the vein of a lot of those dark comedies. Like, I think the other one is Moonrise Kingdom, or there was the other one that came out. Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, I would say it's similar to that.
Yeah, kind of that vibe. And I feel like there was a stint of movies that we got from 2017 to like 2019 maybe that kind of went this route, and I think people were just in life looking for a more serious kind of joke or something like that. But so it felt like a lot of those movies. So it actually, I will say, it was very funny, but it also felt very generic to me. It dealt pretty well with, like, obviously the very serious event of Stalin passing away, and the grab for power. And I ended up doing a lot of research on, like, I guess, like, the facts of this, and actually some of the stuff that really happened in real life is crazier than what happened in the movie.
Yeah.
But it just, like, the movie itself, like, the way it was approached just felt like I could close my eyes and pick a dark comedy from that era and it would feel the same.
I agree in the aspect, and I guess we'll go ahead and we'll jump into spoilers just while we're here. If you want to watch The Death of Stalin, it is available to rent only, just like Bridge of Terabithia, so wherever you would rent a film from. That being said, I do agree in the aspect that I think from the filmmaking point of view, like from the cinematography, from the way everything's shot, the way everything is staged, it definitely does feel a little generic. But this is by Armando Iannucci, who is the same creator and writer behind the series Veep, which is also a political satire of the American political system. And the writing and the acting is where this movie really shines. Particularly in the fact that it's mostly, English and American actors, and they were specifically told not to do accents. Yeah. Because it would take everyone out of the movie. And it's just hilarious to me that it's, I don't know, it's just such a weird and, like, fascinating, stark difference between this and reality.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what gives it its maybe its little bit of uniqueness, is that it's not, like, trying too hard to be period accurate. It is pretty accurate. It's not like overbearing in that sense. But yeah, I will say what ended up taking me out of the movie is that generic cinematography. Like, it just really felt that way. Again, the humor was very good. I found myself laughing multiple times, and I had a great time watching it. That would be my one complaint, would be just that it felt like every other movie that kind of came out at that time. But the cast was incredible. Like you said, I feel like everybody did a phenomenal job. I mean, I loved all the real stuff with, like, that there were no doctors, because in real life he banished or murdered or banished all of them. So when it came time that he needed one, they're like, we don't have one. And then they literally go find one, and they're like, you're coming with us. And he's like, well, what about my dog? Like, what's that?
And just the casual nature of how, like, I think it's the first sequence where you see Simon Russell Beale's character, who's, like, the head of the secret police.
Yeah.
And he's just handing papers, like, all right, kill them, kill them and make the family watch.
And he's like, and you handle the rest of them. And then you look at the list and it's so long.
It's just, like, with such disregard and just, like, comic. It's just, it's so funny. And the entire sequence with the orchestra too, when they're like, no one leave, everyone come back. Like,
that really happened.
Yeah.
I looked it up. That's crazy.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Also, I did look up, though, that it's totally true that the conductor they eventually got to re-record it was the third conductor, because the first two were too wasted when they called them in. They showed up completely drunk.
Gotta love it. It's I mean, just, it's also just the little things too. Like, there's the actual the sequence with the procession when they're walking through, and they're all the party members are standing guard. Yes. And the way they Steve Buscemi just shuffles over, but he's, like, keeping face. It's I
actually wanted to talk about Steve Buscemi. I feel like wild casting choice, but somehow
totally paid off
something reasonable. Yeah, it was really, really good.
Him and Jeffrey Tambor felt like kind of the weird picks,
Yeah.
and it's like, but it totally worked.
I really liked the guard, or not the guard, the whatever
General?
but not the KVD. Yeah, whatever that group is. The general guy in the blue.
Yeah, the guy who played Malfoy's dad.
Yes.
Loved his character.
Yeah, he was really, really good. I really liked him.
The part when he's like talking, I think he's talking to, was it Steve Buscemi, and they're talking about potentially like the coup or whatever, and he's like, I'm gonna have to report this, and then you should see your face.
Oh, and I loved the part later. I think it's kind of towards the end, maybe like the second, third, or like the third, fourth, or whatever. But when they need the girl from the photo, and then there's like literally 4 girls that look identical, and it's like, which one is it? And they're like, it's this one. Then someone else is like, no, it's definitely this one. And then they're like, and then he brings over like a 14-year-old, and he's like, I found her, but she doesn't look like the photo. And then they're just like, goodness gracious.
It's so ridiculous. And like another good moment too is the moment when Stalin actually dies, and it cuts to the 2 guards outside the door. Like, should we go in and check? And he's like, do you want to get shot? Like,
which also actually happened.
I know, it's crazy.
It was really cool how it was very fact based. Besides basically the joking and the accents.
It's really ridiculous, and I think I remember shortly after the movie came out that there was talk, and maybe this is bad timing, but when it was initially supposed to be released in Russia, the Russian government didn't want to show it because it was satirical. But it did premiere in some theaters, and Russian audiences loved the movie. So actually, like, Russian critics said that it was a good choice to make them speak English and in their accents.
I'm also wondering too, because that definitely reminds me of the interview where we made with James Franco and, oh my gosh,
Seth Rogen.
How, I mean, obviously, I don't know if it ever ended up actually being released there, but similar thing where like the country was like, that's super offensive. But then in this case, they were like, oh, but it's kind of funny. Like, they were like, oh, hey, I'm down.
Like, hey, I ain't gonna argue. It is one of those movies I could just sing its praises the whole time.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
But speaking of which, let's go ahead and dive into your general thoughts, or your final thoughts. Excuse me.
Yeah, my final thoughts, kind of, I guess the high summary would be that it's very funny. The casting is really good. If you watch a lot of films like this, it's going to feel pretty generic. Yeah, it might be the best of the bunch, but it does still feel that way. It took me out of the movie quite a lot, where I feel like if I were to make a smash cut, I feel like I could insert other films from other movies in this, and you might not notice if you weren't paying super close attention. And because that, I kind of lose out a little bit on originality. But with all that said, it's still very good. It's still very funny. This movie will definitely surprise you. I thought it was going to be, I didn't even know it was a comedy. So that was really fun for me. So I gave it a 90.
Wow. Alrighty. I personally, for me, I think that The Death of Stalin is an incredibly written and acted dark comedy that's just as funny as it is unflinchingly real. It's one of the most darkly funny movies I've seen in a long time, and because of that, I gave it an 89. I was actually 1 point lower than you, which is interesting.
I felt if I went any closer to Bridge to Terabithia, it might be controversial.
Well, time to go over my prediction. And even though I wrote down the prediction because I knew I didn't want to be wrong, I was still wrong anyway.
Really?
Yeah. I thought I knew I wasn't gonna like Bridge to Terabithia because I'd written my review down, but then I thought you weren't gonna like Death of Stalin, but I was wrong.
Wow. I really tried to not disagree, if that's possible. Like, I thought I was doing the right thing.
But that's going to be an end for this episode. Adrian, where can people find us online?
The Drive Back Podcast on all platforms. Podcasting, YouTube, everywhere you want to listen to us. On YouTube, we post extra content. So outside of the regular every Monday cycle, every once in a while we get some exclusive stuff up there. We recently did a couple tier lists. We're planning on doing a couple watch-throughs. So we got a lot there. And then every Monday on every podcasting app.
That is absolutely correct. Next week we'll have another new episode for you. We had a movie that we were going to watch, but I just realized it is not available to stream anywhere, so we are going to actually have to change our plans here. But stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out the week after this one. We love you so much. We will see you next time here on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.